the Houston Texans, what are you expecting from them this year? They fired David Culley. That was a very controversial move in their franchise because they promoted Lovie Smith, the defensive coordinator. They went 4-13 last year. Do you think they finished with a similar record, a worse one? What are your thoughts on the Texans?
I have them winning one more game. I have them going 5-12, and I think if you're a Texans fan, you should be excited, right? We have Davis Mills last year who showed out and was arguably the second best rookie in the NFL, right up there with Mac Jones, honestly. No one was expecting him to have this type of impact being a third-round pick. But I think if you're a Texans fan, you're going to have a really young team, right? You took Derek Stingley, number 3 overall. Boomer bust type of pick, right? Depending on what player you're getting from LSU, or are you getting that top-tier shutdown corner, or are you getting the guy who's been injured the last couple of years? You have Kenyon Green, who you selected at 15, who could play 4 different positions on the offensive line. Jalen Petrie at pick 37, who played in the slot a lot more than safety while he was at Baylor, but you just lost Justin Reed, so is he going to go back to play safety? Is he going to play corner? Then John Mechie, wide receiver 2, outside of, opposite of Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is one of the most consistent receivers in the league. You can not nail him down for 1,000 yards. He just does it in his sleep. But I think John Mechie was someone who surprised me when I was watching Jameson Williams film. I was not expecting to be as impressed as I was.
He's good.
It's very good possession type of wide receiver, and I think he has a very easy role carved out for him because he doesn't have to beat out many other players. Like Nico Collins is probably his biggest competition outside of obviously Brandon Cooks. And then Dameon Pierce in the 4th round out of Florida never really got the full workload, only had 100 carries in his junior and senior season, but had a really good efficiency ratings. And the Texans last year, league worst 3.4 yards per attempt. Their running back room, they also brought in Marlon Mack. So they're going to have a little bit more explosiveness there, which I think you should be excited for. But unfortunately, I mean, their schedule isn't easy, and they're still one of the worst teams in football. I have them starting off like 0-9.
Can you just name their W's for me? Because you said 5.
So I have them, the games that that I think they'll win. Week 11 at Washington. I think they'll split with Tennessee, and Week 17 versus Jacksonville.
Split with Tennessee.
Yeah. I think there's a few other games where they can win. They could go 50-50, where I gave them 2 wins because there's like 4 or 5 games at Chicago, at Jacksonville, at the Giants, and then Cleveland, depending on quarterback. Cleveland probably beat them, but there's probably like 3 games there that I think could go either way, which brought up their win by 1 for me.
So if I'm a Texans fan, what I'm looking forward to the most is Davis Mills, and whether or not we could, if we're the Texans franchise, we can move on with him and start to see him as our franchise guy, or see if he's just at a minimum a guy that we could potentially just build around and try and actually compete at a higher level than what they're currently competing at right now. I feel like if I'm the Texans, this is my priority. I have a plethora of first-round picks for the future that I just received from the Cleveland Browns. I have a roster that definitely has holes scattered throughout the entirety of the team. But you know what? I love the selection of Derek Stingley. You needed a corner. You go out and you get, in my opinion, the #1 corner in the draft. I know we're going to have some controversy on that.
Sauce.
I did have him over Sauce. And I think that you look at Stingley and how fast he is and how great he was that year in 2019 with LSU before the injuries and before that the lack of play started to teeter people's opinions of him. We saw him as a true freshman be unbelievable, have one of the best seasons we've seen in a corner in college. But overall, one player is not going to change the entire landscape of a defense. I still think defensively they have a lot of work that they need to do. Offensively, you basically glossed over it pretty well. You have Brandon Cooks, Mechie's in there. Pierce is an intriguing player to me because I feel like without the depth of running back that they have in that running back room, I feel like Pierce is going to be put in a position where he's going to get looks, and he might have a little bit of success. That's yet to be seen because their offensive line, where it's not, I don't think it's horrible off the top of my head, but of course you have Laramie Tunsil in there. That's gonna save face.
Green.
There you go. Thank you very much. But ultimately, I still just think that they're their ways away, regardless of how I see Davis Mills. I don't think that he's a bad quarterback by any means. I think that he's more than serviceable for sure. However, I just look at the schedule and I see a very select number of wins.
Yeah.
Week 3, I have them beating Chicago at Chicago. I know that you're probably looking at that game as one that Chicago can win. But
I did have them as a win for Chicago.
You have them beating Chicago or Chicago winning? That's what I figured. I have them beating Washington, and I have them beating Jacksonville Week 17, and that's really it. I mean, I really tried to be fair in my assessments with their schedule, but I just don't see it happening where they're beating. I don't see them beating the Colts. I don't see them beating Tennessee. Kansas City, you have teams like Dallas. Cleveland's one of those games that, depending on Deshaun's, like you mentioned already, that could go either way. Giants is another one that you could see going either way, but I like to hold out optimism when it comes to the Giants, of course, for whatever reason. I'm a fool if I'm being real, but ultimately, I think Houston, if you're a Houston fan, what you should be looking forward to most is seeing Davis Mills progress.
And I think you should also be excited because even if Davis Mills plays about what he did last year, hopefully he improves, chances are you're probably still going to have a top 5 pick. Plus, you're going to have Cleveland's pick, which is probably not going to be great as we're expecting Deshaun to be suspended. So worst case scenario is Davis Mills, you go whatever, 5-12, 4-13, whatever it might be. You get a top 5 pick. You have Davis Mills now, who you could possibly flip for a second-round pick maybe if he plays and improves on last year's season. Plus, you have Cleveland's pick, so you could go get one of the quarterbacks that are going to be coming out in the 2023
Bryce
class.
Young,
plus,
Stroud.
have another mid, maybe top 12 pick with Cleveland.
I feel like the progression with the Texans has been pretty funny. In 2020, this team they had a hole at literally every single position on their roster. 2021, they filled most of those holes with players on one-year deals.
That was crazy.
That were average at best. That outside of like Desmond King, he was like the most notable guy they signed. And now this year, they filled all those holes with like rookies or second-year players. Like right now, you have John Mechie, Kenyon Green, Christian Harris, Stingley, Jalen Petrie, Damian Pierce. They all have a chance to start at some point this season, which means they'd be starting about 7 rookies. Then second-year players, Davis Mills, Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan, they're going to be starting about like 10, 11 first or second-year players next year.
As they should.
And I know everybody's really gassed up and souped up about like this Davis Mills thing because he did show some things on film last year. Weeks 14 to 18, he had a 9-2 touchdown interception ratio, 251 yards per game, 68% completion percentage. But it wasn't all pretty, like Mills had the lowest success rate on checkdowns of any quarterback in the last 4 years by nearly 11%. Those are on specifically flat routes. He had a 16.7% success rate on those plays, which means that he's one of the bigger check down artists that we've seen in a very long time. He checks it down a lot, which is why his efficiency numbers were pretty good.
Would you believe me if I'm looking at a highlight clip of Paris Campbell catching a ball that Matt Ryan definitely did not put in the spot where he needed to be, but Paris Campbell made a hell of a catch.
Well, Paris Campbell could play.
Hold on. Hopefully we don't get copyrighted for this.
No, we won't because it's not in the
no one can see this.
Yeah, they can't see it. Let's look at that pretty ball.
It's a terrible throw.
Wow, look at that.
That throw was ass, but that catch was nice.
Nice grab.
I mean, that's where he could only put it, though.
You could put it on the outside.
If he put it on the outside, he's going to go out of bounds. He was going to go out of bounds, though.
If you put it higher, he catches it and comes down 2 feet.
That's not bad ball placement because
he threw it at the corner. He threw it at the corner.
Dude, what we're not going to do is break down training camp film.
Bro,
the
corner's not looking at the pass, though.
Dude,
what are you saying? The corner's not looking at the pass.
What are you saying about the
Texans?
Dude,
that pass was ass.
Stop hating on that.
We just talked about the Colts for like 50 minutes.
Stop hating on that, man. But listen, I think the Texans are going to be bad again next year. There's no way around it. I think that Davis Mills is going to be good enough to be like, he's solid, but not good enough for the Texans to be like, we're going to pass up on Bryce Young for this guy.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
Like, no, I think Davis Mills is a bridge quarterback. He had a good rookie season, but I'm not super high on Davis Mills' projection.
Davis Mills needs to be Kirk Cousins for them to pass on Bryce Young.
I think Mills...
And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins now. I'm saying Kirk Cousins when he was ascending to being a starter.
I think Kirk Cousins is Davis Mills' ceiling. That's what I think his ceiling is.
So well said.
But I'm not very high on Davis Mills. I think Kirk Cousins, although he has a ceiling, a limited ceiling, Kirk Cousins like makes the right play almost all the time. His problem is that he just can't extend anything. Davis Mills can use his legs a little bit, but there are some decisions there that I do have questions about. But this team is going to be bad. I mean, the additions they made to the roster, Marlon Mack, who's always hurt, A.J. Cann, guard from the Jaguars. Steven Nelson was pretty good. Their secondary might overachieve a little bit with Stingley and Steven Nelson and Desmond King. They brought in Christian Kirksey, Jerry Hughes, and Mario Addison, so bringing in some players from the Bills' defensive line, I think that's going to help them. But they are just devoid of talent currently, and their rankings from last year, 30th ranked offense and 27th ranked defense, is probably going to stay around the same. I have them going 3-14, The only wins I see them winning are Chicago. Jacksonville could be a win, but they could very well lose that. I think they split. So Chicago, Jacksonville, and the Giants. That's it, really.
That's fine. I had Washington.
Those are the 3 wins I have them winning.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
3 games I have them winning.
I have 3-14 also, so
that's
cool
why,
that.
yeah. I'm not, Texans are the Texans.
I know, and I'm super stoked to talk about this next team.
Yeah. Also, I was going to ask you, so if Judy has 66 receptions for 987 yards, what are your thoughts?
I'm disappointed.
That's a break. Okay. I'm just checking. Because
I'm consistent, bro. I'll be honest.
No, I'm just checking because
I'm disappointed.
Denver Fan, which is a radio station in Denver, they crunched up a bunch of numbers to calculate where Jerry Jeudy stats should be year 3. So based on his catchable ball percentage and also accounting for Russell Wilson and his impact and the target share,
that was their.
It's saying the projection is 66 catches for 987 yards.
Any touchdowns or no?
It has no touchdowns here in this projection.
That's fine. If they're going based off projections, it's understandable. Where his rookie season, he had over 800. Second season, missed some time, wasn't as productive as many Bronco fans would have wanted him to be, me included. But I understand the situation that he was in, and I understand now that he's getting Russell Wilson, and the sky's the limit.
I think that's a good season for him.
I would be disappointed.
Me too.
Like, I know you'd be disappointed because you're, like, saying 1,300 yards and stuff, like 1,200 yards and stuff. But I think that's a reasonable season for him.
Just with Russell Wilson, I just can't see a world where he is not at least an 1,000-yard receiver. They should have just been kind and just given him 1,000. What, 984 is what they had?
987.
Okay.
I'd agree with you if
he's a first-round pick. I want to see him dog.
I'd agree with you if the Broncos didn't have so much depth. Like, if this was Seattle where it's Lockett, DK, and nobody else, I'm like, that Jeudy should get 1,000.
It should just be a known fact that Jerry Jeudy should be the most important wide receiver.
Separate himself from the rest of these guys.
Because he
I don't think it's
he has certain characteristics that nobody else on the team has.
And Sutton has some also.
The only one that I will give him is his over-the-top ability of literally a one-on-one, but even still, Jeudy has shown flashes where one-on-one he can still win.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing for
over the top. I said.
So what if it's just 1,000 flat?
He breaks over 1,000 in year 3. I'm happy, but I want to see him.
13-yard difference.
So you're saying the 13-yard difference is you from disappointed to I'm good.
But I want to see him clean over 1,000, clean like 1,100. I want to see him just not even it be a question because 1,100 you can't even. There's nothing you could say negatively on 1,100.
I don't know if you guys
because I'll tell you what, 1,001 from Mike Williams. I shit talk him for that. Because he barely broke 1,000, and this is the guy that everyone likes to chat about being that guy. Where this past season,
he was great 2019. He was great.
He was good.
Even though it's
1,001 yards, you know what? You're really good. 1,000 yards, you're really good.
He got that in 15 games.
There's no small.
So he didn't play the final game.
But in Mike Williams' first 2 seasons, Jerry Jeudy had that combined in his first.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy is going to be great. No, for sure. But he still played same amount of games.
So Jeudy, I don't know if you guys seen this.
He played a decent amount of games, actually, believe it or not.
He suffered a groin injury at practice 2 days ago, and he tweaked his hamstring 3 days ago in practice. Jeudy.
He came back out to watch the rest of practice, so I don't think it's serious.
Yeah. I mean, also, I was just gonna let you guys know, just for me to go on a little bit of a victory lap here.
I would love the victory lap in June.
Debo wasn't my only wide receiver take last year. It was Mike Will too. I said he was going to have his best season of his career.
I said that also.
Mike Will was fantastic the first 8 weeks.
I said that also. Yeah.
With him being in the X receiver in that offense.
He has to be. He had to be.
So Mike Will. So
had Justin
I probably had more, so it's 2 for 2.
He had 10 games in 2017. 2016, 16 games. He only started 6 because he's not him.
Who's starting over? Obviously Keenan. Who the hell was starting
I don't know. It makes
Williams.
The other Williams?
I forgot his first name, but he's the deep threat for them. 2018 Chargers. I know. Let me see. I think he had 1,000 yards that year. Let me see. So Keenan Allen had 1,200 basically. Tyrell Williams had 60.
Tyrell.
He was
good.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He had 653. in that year. So he had less than Mike Will.
653.
I mean, Mike Will had in 16 games had 664 yards but 10 touchdowns in 5 starts.
Impressive for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, 6'5".
Yeah, I mean he's a red zone threat there. That year they had Keenan, Mike Will,
And then
Tyrell.
the next season, 1,001
Austin,
but 2. And then the year after
Antonio
that,
Gates.
756.
How many touchdowns?
5. But
Touchdowns fluctuate.
I mean,
usually.
I understand. Like, look, Mike Will is a disappointment for where he was selected. He was supposed to be an elite receiver,
Oh, yeah.
but he's still a great receiver.
my point being is if people can prop up Mike Williams, I should be allowed to prop up Jerry Jeudy, which I'm not saying you guys aren't saying that. I'm just speaking generally. I believe in Jerry Jeudy and his ability.
As do I.
Especially
So
with
what's
Russell
your
Wilson.
so what would be your thought process if Judy is Mike Will in terms of the production?
Do you want me to live in your hypothetical? Because I don't think that that's going to happen. I
Because
think
Mike
Judy's going to
Will
exceed
Mike
him.
Will just had 1,100 yards and that was his best season.
And even still, there was moments in that season where he was a no-show.
Oh, yeah. The first 8 weeks is when he absolutely dominated the league, and he disappeared.
I say this. I listen. I don't want this to be.
So
a
if Judy
completely-
has 1,100, you're disappointed.
no, I said 1,100. I'm fine with.
You're fine with.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Like overly ecstatic with or fine with.
1,100, and we are the top of our division.
So
Take
why
that to the fucking crib.
So why 1,100 for Mike Will? You're like disappointed.
In year 5, I'm not disappointed in it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying people love to prop up Mike Will, and they were consistently saying Mike Will, Mike Will, Mike Will. Then let me get my Jerry Jeudy propaganda off.
Mike was very up and down. It wasn't just the first 8 weeks. He was just very up and down last season.